That's not the problem. The problem is you don't know where you're spending your money.
Yeah, you don't know, where any of it's going.
Yeah.
But Michael, if I just earned another $10,000 a year, all my problems would be fixed.
Honestly, James, sometimes I earn another 10 grand per year and I spend 20. Yeah. It's just, that's the way it goes.
Once again, extravagant and bizarre.
Welcome to Checks and Balances, brought to you by Partners Life. I am Michael Vincent. This is James Blair. And today, 5 signs you are poor.
So today we are talking about the 5 signs of why you are poor. Now, look, everybody can misconstrue episodes. Everybody can feel the hate, thinking it's a personal attack. Just really important to talk about that we're not taking the mickey out of anybody's situation. Obviously, with the cost of living crisis, there's a lot of people who are struggling at the moment. The biggest thing I'd say, Mike, is, poor is a mindset. Like, in terms of how you think about life, how you go about situation, how you try and improve your situation. I know you're giving me a smirk.
Is it? If you have no money in your bank account, the reason is so we did this, we got a new series coming out where it's going to be, I'm in debt, get me out of here. And we're looking at, helping people out, maybe paying off some people's debt or, that sort of thing. It was super interesting because we put it up and I literally had people, DMing me personally on Instagram being like, mate, pick me. And I was like, well, why don't you just apply? And they're like, oh, I'm too embarrassed. And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, and it was like, we're down to one income, mortgage rates are through the roof because there was a health issue, someone can't work. We got more outgoings than income, just there and there's diet. And I was like, why don't you just apply? Yeah. And they're like, well, I'm so embarrassed. I'm like, you've done the embarrassing thing. You've already told me what's going on.
The other thing I'm particularly worried about is the concept we're going to pay off your debt. Where are we getting this money from, Mike?
Shout out to Partners Life. So we're going to start on the So look, all right. So this week, obviously, 5 signs you're poor. Again, this is all about practical tips, things you can do, how to change your mindset, and what you can do over the long term to get yourself out of that situation. So should we start with one for one? You want to go lick for lick?
Yep, let's go. If you stopped working, you wouldn't be able to maintain your lifestyle for more than 3 months. So, Mike, I think this is a pretty straightforward one. It's people who are living paycheck to paycheck. Yeah. They're just living in the moment, getting by, but there's no planning for the future. We talk about the 5 key pillars of wealth creation. We'll see if I can get them all off the top of my head. Setting good goals, getting your income up, managing your expenses, your wealth creation strategy and your protection strategy. That probably leans towards the protection strategy piece, right?
Yeah.
That you've got to make sure you've got an emergency fund.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time, especially you've heard us say this 1,000 times about budgeting, and if you haven't heard us say it 1,000 times, there's about 1,000 episodes where we talk about budgeting. So just pick one and listen to it.
Yeah. And we talk about it so often because it's so bloody important, right? People want to go off and do all these different things. But if you can't manage your money, you're not going to go anywhere. And we see that with people earning really, really big paychecks. People earning $1 million a year and going backwards each fortnight. Yeah. Which I know just sounds bonkers.
But it happens.
Coming back to that philosophy that if you can't manage $50,000 a year, there's no way you can manage $1 million a year.
And for everyone who's like, they're just making that up, for the camera, we are not we don't have to make stuff up. We see so many customers in so many situations that we have people who are earning a shed ton of money and going backwards.
Yep. So some really important points in there. So a question for you all to think about: if you were to stop working tomorrow, either whether it's within your control or out of your control, say for example, people get sick of Mike all the time and go, screw this boss, I'm leaving. Got to make sure, how much money do you have to decide? Or if you get sick, have you got money set aside? If you get made redundant, what does that look like? And it's really important in terms of emergency fund. It is not within your control.
Yeah.
Everybody, I would assume that if you're listening to this podcast, you've had enough life happen to you that unexpected things happen.
Oh, absolutely. So if we're looking at an action step around this, what can people do?
So you need to, firstly, a really good step is make sure you know how much your fixed expenses are. It's crazy how few people know what their fixed expenses are. So write down all of your expenses for the month, and then you should have 3 to 6 months of expenses to the side. If you don't have a mortgage, a savings account's a really good idea. If you've got a mortgage, Mike, a
offset, revolving credit, anything where you're kind of reducing that interest cost with those savings.
Yeah, cool.
And a quick one there. We say 3 to 6 months. Just think about your situation. Do you have kids? Are you self-employed? Is the income lumpy? if you are dialing up what you think potentially is a little bit of risk and a bit more need, go for 6 months.
Yeah.
Once you get it saved and it's sitting there, beautiful. You don't have to touch it again.
I tell you what, those real estate agents over the last couple of years definitely wish their emergency fund was a little bit bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So next one, our second sign that you are poor, you spend money before you get it. Look, spending money before you get it is a really common habit. A lot of people do it. We're talking credit cards. We're talking afterpays. We're talking personal loans in some instances. And what it does is it puts you into a debt cycle. And that debt cycle can be very difficult to get out of, because not only do you have to make the interest payments, you also have to make the principal payments while still trying to live your life and have enough money to cover your day-to-day costs.
Yeah, and it makes me think about when your boy went on the news and talked about Afterpay.
Yeah.
Which, little highlight. But the amount of hate I got for my views on Afterpay,
I know.
it just doesn't surprise me at all. Like, people are like, oh, I don't pay the interest. Like, I'm making the system work for me. Credit cards, blah, blah, blah. It's so simple. It doesn't matter if you are one of those people that are paying no interest. Save the money before you spend the money.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that complicated. You have to, if you're going paycheck to paycheck, chasing your tail, you're never going to get anywhere. You're going to work for the rest of your life. So just stay away from it. Like, what's the benefit?
Yeah. And I guess the other thing is, because you get the dopamine hit of I've spent the money, I've got the thing without the funds leaving your account, you are more inclined to spend money that you otherwise wouldn't spend.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds like I'm making that up, but it is 1,000% true.
Yeah.
It is designed to get you to spend more money. And to be honest, it all works. Like, you can make the system work for you, and it's all good until it's not working, until something goes wrong and you don't have that emergency fund. And all of a sudden you're behind on the payments.
Yep.
And then you are paying interest, and then it gets more difficult and more difficult and more difficult. And that's the trap that people don't get. While you're still jogging on the treadmill and everything's spinning, it's fine. When it's not, it goes wrong quickly.
Yeah, and it makes me think about a great Jim Rohn quote, which is, wealthy people. I love how you smirk before I say a quote.
It was just the name.
Yeah.
It was Jim Rohn.
Jim Rohn. He honestly,
He sounds like an 80s wrestler.
wow, he's definitely from the 80s. But he talks about how if you have a wealthy mindset, you invest first and spends what is left over. If you have a poor mindset, you spend all your money and invest what's left over.
Yeah.
And it's just such a big difference. And if you are in that debt cycle, you're just going to stay there forever.
Yeah. And we always put it down to that instant gratification versus delayed gratification, right? It's, you've got to make sure that we call it the tug of war, and that, present you versus future you, and future you doesn't end up face down in the mud.
Yeah. And the other piece is, so many people are on autopilot, right? And they're just going through it, feeling like they deserve things that they're not really entitled to, and they're just going through the cycle. The action around this to improve it, to stay away from debt, it's quite simple, is write down all your expenses, put a budget in place, get good money management skills, and also set goals that you're working towards.
Yeah.
If you're not motivated or excited about the future or trying to work to something, no wonder that you're using these debts.
So James, before we continue, I have got a special announcement.
Have you started sticking to your budget?
Absolutely not.
You finally made it as an after-hours DJ.
I wish. Mate, the thing is, we have got a brand new podcast partner, Partners Life.
You mean the award-winning insurance provider with over 300,000 Kiwis insured?
Yep, they're also a New Zealand operated company, and they are passionate about increasing financial literacy amongst Kiwis.
Sounds like a great match. Where can I learn more about them?
Check out their website in our show notes below.
Really thought DJ Magic Mike was going to be a global sensation for a second.
All right, what's number 3, Jimmy?
You spend your paycheck as soon as it comes in. So there's a lot of people, some people that I love, that you can probably guess which family members I am referring to, where if you live in the life where you know exactly when payday is going to be because you've lived off rice and beans, the whole like living like a king or queen at the start of the paycheck and living like a pauper at the end of it.
Yeah.
And then all of your bills have to go back out and then you're poor again.
When I switched from fortnightly to monthly pays, because everything in the UK is monthly pays, wowee, that first one, whew,
Yeah.
really quickly you're like, oh crap, there's still 2 more weeks to go.
Especially with your lifestyle. The big thing is like the finance.
The big thing is everyone must think I have this like extravagantly bizarre lifestyle the amount of times that we talk about it.
Can confirm it is extravagant and it's definitely bizarre. So a big part is just the financial strain this puts on you. So living paycheck to paycheck like leaves no room for unexpected expenses. Coming back to the emergency fund earlier on, if something goes wrong, you are screwed. You're going to end up using short-term debts with high interest rates and get into a really bad cycle. It's just not a good way to live, Michael.
Yeah, 100%. And like, I guess really there's two sides to this, right? Either you are living paycheck to paycheck and there is no discretionary income there or very little, and you don't have a lot of scope to move. Or, and what we probably more commonly see is people living paycheck to paycheck with a lot of discretionary spend in there. And a lot of it they don't even see. They don't know where the money goes. Yep. And at the end of it, I've still got nothing left. And then they get a pay rise and they don't know where the money goes, right? They haven't done a financial audit, written down what are their expenses and being super honest with it, going back through the statements and going, here is where I spend all my money. And I'm not saying you can't have avocado on bloody toast. That's not the problem. The problem is you don't know where you're spending your money.
Yeah, you don't know where any of it's going.
Yeah.
But Michael, if I just earned another $10,000 a year, all my problems would be fixed.
Honestly, James, sometimes I earn another 10 grand per year and I spend 20. Yeah. It's just, that's the way it goes.
Once again, extravagant and bizarre.
Yeah. So a couple of things we can look at here. Like the first one, obviously, we've talked about it. Just do that financial audit, get the budget in place, work out where everything's going, and then just see where you can trim your expenses.
Yeah.
The other thing is sometimes you just need to look at ways to increase your income, right? We're not a big fan of side hustles and things like that, but focusing on your role, thinking, talking with your boss about, okay, here's where I am now. How do I get to the next level? What do I have to hit to do that? And then how do I go out and hit it? And what support do I need from my boss or my workplace to go and hit that?
Yeah, the reality is if you're not earning a certain level of income as a minimum, it's very hard to get any momentum in your financial plan because there is just like a basic cost of living, which feels like it's getting higher and higher.
100%.
Yep. Okay, number 4, you're always worrying about money.
Yeah, look, the financial strain that puts on people is pretty hefty, right? That constant worry about money, not being able to meet your expenses, worrying about where the next thing's coming from, how many days do I have left going paycheck to paycheck? That is a huge strain on a person with a family, a person in a relationship. That type of strain can really impact your relationships with other people. And it's just, it's horrible.
And interest rates going from 2% to 7% definitely hasn't helped with any of that.
Yeah.
Luke Kemmy's great quote, I'm sure he poached it from somebody else, but the antidote to anxiety is action. That's really important. So I have spoken to a lot of people over the last 18 months who have been very stressed about their financial situation. The most important thing is, opposed to just worrying, up at night, thinking about it, how am I going to make these bills, talk to somebody, write down the problem, write down potential solutions, and take action. Now, that might be with a financial advisor in the form of a financial plan. It could be more simple than that. But do not just stress out about this. There is always a solution. There's always a conversation. A perfect example is if you're struggling with your mortgage repayments, right? Making sure you're talking to the bank, talking to a mortgage broker to go, here's my situation. Here's what I'm worried about. And it's funny how often it's actually quite easily solved.
Yeah, I was watching something on the news last night. And it was the same thing about like interest rate costs rising and what you can do and how much stress people are under and all these sorts of things. And we've got the official cash rate coming out on Wednesday, which hopefully stays flat, which means interest rates won't keep going up. The really interesting thing is the financial advisor who was talking about it went through all of this stuff about like side hustles and like getting a second job and taking in a boarder or taking in an international student before she actually talked about going to the bank and just seeing whether or not you can adjust your mortgage repayments. And I was like, that seems such a bizarre way to talk about this. The first thing you should do, if you've got a mortgage, you're in bed with that bank, like for a long time. That they've got a vested interest in you being okay as well. Go have a chat to them as early as you can because they will try and help.
Yeah. So work out a plan and take action. Number 5, Mike, what have we got?
You don't have financial goals, so you are drifting on the financial ocean.
Yeah. So the big thing with this, you might go, what do goals have to do with being poor? You have to have something that you're trying to work towards. If you don't have that motivation, that structure for a future you're trying to build, as the monkeys that we are built for instant gratification. So to have delayed gratification, we need to be working towards something much bigger.
Yeah.
So if you don't know, you and your spouse don't know where you want to be in a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, what options you want to create for your kids, what kind of retirement, where you want to live, what you want to do, you're just going to be spinning your wheels.
Yeah. And it makes it very difficult to stay on track over the long term if you don't have long-term goals. Like we always talk about this, people are cheering you on at the start of the marathon and at the end, no one's cheering you on in the middle.
The grind.
Yeah. You've just, and this is what's going to keep you on track is having those long-term goals.
Yep. So it's really important that you sit down and work through those. Really, in terms of a financial plan, that's the very first step.
Yeah.
Very easy question to ask, very complicated one to answer. What do you want? And then once you can work through that, you can get on the same page as your spouse. Then you can start building and going, okay, this is the future we want. What are the short-term actions? And the beautiful thing about financial planning is we talk about compounding returns, but compounding actions, it hurts my brain to think about, where somebody can be in 5 or 10 years if they, every 6 months, they set some actions, knock them out, and move on to bigger and better ones.
Yeah, 100%. So our 5 Signs You Poor episode, we're going to end with 3 key takeaways. Our first one has got to be build that emergency fund, guys. You've got to have that emergency fund there to sustain one's lifestyle in case something goes wrong with those unexpected financial hardships. We're talking saving 3 to 6 months worth of expenses, and that can provide that crucial safety net as you're moving through life.
The next takeaway, set clear financial goals. You're just merely existing, floating through the ether without goals that you're trying to work towards over time. So think about what you want in the future, set actions, because goals are nothing unless you take the action, have the discipline behind it, go and get it.
And our last takeaway has got to be that financial discipline and planning, right? So practice that instant gratification versus delayed gratification. Which one are you? How often do you need one versus the other? That delayed gratification is going to get you further in the future. Develop those effective money management tools, the budget, the planning, the goals, checking in with people, maybe having a financial plan, avoiding spending money before you get it, making sure you're not living paycheck to paycheck. All of these things we've just talked about, if you can create a budget, start at the start and work through it, that's what's going to help you.
Cool. So if you're offended by the 5 signs of being poor, you're going to stay poor. But if you want to take control of your future, take action. It's amazing what people can do with the right kind of headspace, the right short-term steps. Thank you very much to Partners Live. Make sure to subscribe, review, and like, and we'll catch you next time.
Cheers.